Peace to the family, peace to the family. Thanks for dropping by to Africa Online TV. I have lots and lots of great new content ready for my audience. And get back, get your popcorn, lay back, relax. For people who are new to my channel is Africa Online TV on YouTube. And I try to talk about things Africa, uh, cultural, historical, political, right? And sometimes things that deal with African people in the modern world. Um, the Metropolitan Museum of Art has finally opened up its gallery um, of the Nelson Rockefeller, the formerly the the Nelson C. Rockefeller Gallery that has been dormant for about 2 years. Um, I remember going to the Met and always going to the Egyptian wing, and then going to the Africa Arts of Africa wing, Nelson Rockefeller wing, which was formerly the primitive art wing that is connected to Native America and Oceania. And then one day it just closed. And so I think I've been waiting for two and a half years for it to reopen. It's been such a long time. And anybody who's went to the Met with me, uh, what I try to do is do the ancient Egyptian wing first and then go into Arts of Africa just briefly to close out the tour for the long tours that I do. So what I want to do is begin to introduce. It is so much, right? So that means I have so much material. So I'm going to start in different places. So the first place I'm going to start at is talking about what the Metropolitan Museum of Art has done to supplement its Arts of Africa, which is enormous, unprecedented. And so many of you don't know, um, and a lot of you are not from New York, and I do understand, and you probably won't be able to get to the exhibition itself. Now, I checked the bookstore to see if they had a catalog, but they don't have a catalog yet. They may have something smaller, but not yet. So while you are, who else is on the chat? Okay, I have Sun Lion, uh, and I guess some other people will catch up later, and maybe I'll replay my video. But without further ado, let's play the video that I have for you. So um, I need your help, Sun Lion. If you could just press one to let me know that you can hear it. So I need your help on that. So let's do this. Um, yeah. So if you can just press one, if you can hear it, and then I'll rewind it. Okay.
Welcome to Africa Online TV. Today's video is to alert the...
Okay, so I need your help. I'm going to
One-fourth of the works are on display at the museum for the first time.
thank you so much. And so let's begin.
Welcome to Africa Online TV. Today's video is to alert the audiences to the Met's commitment to Africa, mission, art, and the people of Africa, and a hidden bonus. The Met's Arts of Africa Galleries has returned on May 31st, 2025 in a reimagined Michael C. Rockefeller wing. Following a multi-year renovation, the re-envisioned installation reintroduces visitors to the museum's collection of sub-Saharan African art through a selection of some 500 works organized to survey major artistic movements and living traditions from across the subcontinent. The new galleries present original creations from the Middle Ages to the present, and 1/4 of the works are on display at the museum for the first time. To supplement the exhibition, the Met has included very informative and rare footage on social media very quietly. These cultural landmarks presented on YouTube is a perfect way of showing how the artwork lives within the culture. This undertaking of connecting the art to the living spaces is unprecedented and shows enormous commitment to its exhibition pieces, its mission, and its commitment to the places and peoples. Now getting to the bonus, I will turn the video over to Brother Reggie to introduce it for our audiences.
Great, great. So, let me tell you what is extraordinary about what the Metropolitan Museum of Art is doing. So they quietly, if you go to the metmuseum.org, at Met Museum on YouTube, they have released, let's see, let's bring it into the show. Give me a second. Yeah. Okay. They have, I'll start at the main page. What they have done is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, what they have done is they have quietly released several videos in the last days to talk about where their art, where the art in the arts of Africa, where these pieces come from. So prior, uh, what they had done, it was just have the pieces, really no audio or video supplement of it, and just captions. And it was a very old exhibition. So they have updated this exhibition, right, to show you the places. Now, this is the Met's content, so I have to be very careful, try not to get a strike. But everybody, I wish I could play it, but it does have music and it does have audio. But what I will do is that I will give you a preview of it, right, without the sound, and I will talk, right? How about that? Okay, so let's go through real quickly, right? Let's go quickly through the videos that they had just posted. Africa's Cultural Landmarks trailer. They posted it 3 days ago. They only have, believe it or not, 1,800 views, right? That's their trailer, right? Then they have Rock-Hewn Churches of Lalibela, Ethiopia, right? Wow, 3 days ago. Then they have Rock Horn Churches of Tigray, Ethiopia. Posted that 3 days ago. So the first one is 7 minutes of incredible footage. The second one is 9 minutes of incredible footage. Then they released the Asante buildings in Ghana 3 days ago. Wow. They, because of the audience in Ghana, uh, wow, they have 5,200 views, right? And that's 7 minutes long. Then they have bronze casters of Goon Street in Benin City, right? There they have 337 views, and it's 3 minutes long. And then we have material from the Republic of Benin and Togo, Wow, how many Africans in America have been taken from Benin? How many Africans in South America have been taken from Benin, right? Um, 9 minutes of crazy footage. The tombs of the Buganda kings in Uganda 3 days ago. They have a lot of views for this. Incredible. Historic towns of Kilwe, Kisiwani, and Songo, Nora, Tanzania. Wow. 1,500 views 3 days ago. Then we have Botswana landmarks, right? So this is some of the earliest African human-made land materials from Botswana, and you can see it flashing right there in his hand. And then the Great Zimbabwe, and then Nigeria's cultural landmarks, right? The Sacred Grove, 3 days ago, 18,000 views. So we have a large Nigerian population. And then we go all the way to Madagascar, which is really important to the slave trade, really important to uh, intercontinental travel, right? Uh, that's 8 minutes long. Benin City again, wow, right? And then um, Liberia, right? Liberia is very important to us. We've had great expeditions with some success and some failure and some aftermath that uh, has not been too kind to both the African and the African American. But Booker T. Washington went there. Garvey was trying to send, that was a place that Garvey was going to land. Um, so they have for this, wow, 2,000 views. And then we have the Arch of Africa map. Now I'm going to do a special show on the Arch of Africa map, but and then let's see, then we have some other materials for the other uh, galleries that has opened, Oceania, and then the Native Americans, right? So wow, we have lots of material to go through. I mean, really, um, if I had permission, wow, I would play each and every one of them. But so what I'm going to do is I am going to sneak in to these just to give you a preview, and I'm going to sneak in. I'm not going to play any sound. I'm just going to play a little footage and read the captions. How about that? How about that? Why? Because we are committed to Africa Online TV, and me as a scholar, intellectual, I am committed always to show you Africa, um, the origin of civilization, the cultures that became civilizations. Some of these cultures are civilizations, but just not named civilizations. And um, and we're looking at the march of Africans for over 100,000 years within Africa, right? And then leaving Africa maybe 60,000 years ago and 30,000 years ago, right? But the world has made the out of Africa experience more important than the African experience. And the Metropolitan Museum of Art is committed to at least showing the origins of civilization. Prior to this, of course, they had the African origin of civilization. For the first time, they combined Nile Valley culture with what they call sub-Saharan culture, right? For the first time, and this is the result. So they repackaged uh, well, they repackaged material from there and they put it in the Arch of Africa wing, right? Which largely is what they have called sub-Saharan Africa. How great is what they call sub-Saharan Africa? Uh, early in the century and before, all the way going back to the 1700s, uh, the European uh, and going back to the enslavement period, the Europeans tried to marginalize Africa for the purpose of enslavement. That these people had no souls to save, right? That nothing came great, and that the greatness of the civilizations came from um, the Levant and other places. So let's go read some of these words. And then that is saying about it. And I think that this is what I'm doing is really extraordinary. Immortal Dragon, peace to you. How are you? So, um, for our audiences, however they are named, I'm not going to use the name that they call it because it's not that name that they use it. My shows are for people who want the truth, who want the facts, who want to get as close to the facts than the truth. My show is only about religious studies when it connects to Africa or there is some clarification needed, right? So when we hear these great religious stories from these groups of people who are converted into those religions, they're not showing you really primary information. They're just not doing that. What they are doing is using the English translation of books to promote MIBs, right? And MIBs can be great, but the fact of the matter is MIBs are not necessarily true. So let's go through this one, um, and let's go read some of the things that they say. So heritage is a source of I think that we can all agree with that. Let me blow this up a little bit more. Heritage, and so here we are looking at Lalibela. Now I don't know all these places by heart, right? The meaning of life. What do they say? The meaning of annuity. How do you conserve your monuments? Wow. What is this? This is great Zimbabwe. Wow. Normally, we see aspects of the Great Zimbabwe, but because the world is modern now and you have drones and things like that that can fly over, we get to see Great Zimbabwe. That's what they're going to highlight. What else do we have? How do you conserve the artifacts, right? So now we know that we are in Ethiopia, right? And in Ethiopia, now we have some idea of some of the early works in Ethiopia during the Christian period. And that you can see these saints, and you can see how they have made these saints in their image, right? Um, okay, so wow. So now they're building a tomb, it seems. Most of this kind of architecture has been demolished. Who has demolished them? Why have they been demolished? These are the questions. This is in a pyramid type of shape. And so it would not have survived throughout the years. But here is these Africans are undertaking the building of this tomb. Often um, in scholarship, you see these type of homes that are built in this way throughout Africa, right? The Europeans might call them huts, but these are homes built with materials of the environment. And though this is in the mod in 2025 still exists, these are still their abodes. Where are we at now? possibly Zimbabwe again. Um, just the incredible architecture there. So when you're seeing castles and moats and stuff like that, you can look at the Great Zimbabwe and you can see that the African um, endeavored in this. So it says this is among the walls collapsing because of the impact of climate changes. But they had lasted so many years. Wow. This is Africa, family. This is Africa. This is beautiful Africa. And for some people, this particular small island is very important and home. And it's so beautiful. And you can see the backdrop of more modern buildings. But within these sacred places are artifacts. What do we have? The skills are actually now getting very rare. So this uh, scholar will tell you that the skill building of this of to create in Africa is very rare. We have ditched our creative skills for um, modern skill building, but this is Africa. And so they noticed that the culture is not surviving. And in here, they will, in this excavation, I think, of Zimbabwe, what they will find is they will find copper, and they will find some gold, and they will find other pieces in the architect that have been recovered. Uh, Obviously, there is a need for education, right? And they're making it out, right? Education helps us understand the past. Education helps us to look at our current situation um, and to integrate and merge it. Okay, so here we have Ethiopia again. Um, and so the Met has done a great job of going on location silently in their commitment. Oh, wow, we have rock art, probably of Botswana, other places in southern Africa, in Sito, and, and 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 still existing, right? And being preserved. And you see real here quickly. So you see the antelopes in this time period. You see the giraffe and the antelopes, and those were to them sacred animals, animals that they studied, just like they will study these animals in what we call uh, Nubia A and Egypt, right? They are connected to these islands, I mean, to these animals, and that's why they're there. Okay, so what else do we have? One of the experts, let's say, um, okay, so could not enter. So here it looks like we're in Ethiopia in Lalibela, and they're saying that we would have liked to tell more of it, but the experts, as they're called, they can't enter because this is their holies of holies. Nobody is allowed in their holies of holies. Nobody. So, um, uh, so what they what but you see some of the architecture of the great these causeways in Lalibela in Ethiopia in their holies of holies, their entry places in their the camera stops here against this wall. This is their holies of holies. This is the African story, and in this case, it's the African Christian story. Uh, which is different than modern Christianity. Actually, some of the oldest Torah texts, right, are in Ethiopia, right? Not in the Levant, and actually in Ethiopia. So where are we? what does it say right here? So I'm doing this to get you so you can watch the videos in all of its glory, right? And I am. So here we see a traditional dance still that they are performing, so that there's people who still know the old ways. And these are the people we should consult instead of uh, some of these people that we see on YouTube with forbidden knowledge and things like that. It's more important to consult with the living culture, because it says whenever you see heritage, it's lost forever. Okay, so then I can say, most likely here, we're looking at Ghana, and we're looking at talking drums. And so they created a language around the drums so the drums could talk, right? Their words are in the, uh, and other cultures followed that. Okay. The African on the continent knows that their own people, and certainly those descendants of Africa, are disconnected. And so we find on YouTube and some of these other channels, we see so many people talking about, 8th century, uh, 1st century um, periods where the African began this journey 100,000 years ago. And then we have places, incredible places like in the Green Sahara. And we have a place that's out of Africa, Gobekli Tepe, which is an extraordinary place where they want to say the first temples were there. Well, um, yes, if you want to look at it like that, the first temples that are preserved in whole, you might say yes, but the culture started much, much earlier. And so people make the mistake of looking at, um, not creating a false narrative that it was places like Gobekli Tepe that gave Africa's culture, when that's not the play. That's not the case. It went the other way around. Okay, so where are we? Okay, so we have finished the first of the shows, and so let's go back and let's go through another one. Okay, so now we go into, so when it means rock hewn churches, that means these churches were fabricated out of rock, right? And that they were, many of these churches were built underground. So from the top of the ground on solid rock down, and they were made by human hands, right? Now, Africa has a great heritage of um, tunneling and living in the rocks, living in caves, right? And then you can see in the temples of ancient Egypt, as it is called, you can see um, their expertise. And then later you can see the expertise of other groups in North Africa, the Checheno uh, that became the Garamantes. You can see that. And so this is in a much later period, but the technology and the art form has already been conceived and perfected. So where are we at? So let's go to the beginning of this. So this is a place of pilgrimage. We're talking about Ethiopia. Now, King Azana, and sorry, I don't have all my notes, but King Azana uh, was the first Ethiopian convert to Christianity. And King Azana uh, uh, began being connected to the kind of Byzantine church, right? The Constantinople church. And so the story, from my memory, goes that several monks went to Ethiopia, and they let only one survive. And that one, he became the tutor of the young King Azana, because at that time his mother was running the throne. And so Ethiopia at that time was very concerned about now it's being, I won't completely say global, but there were foreign powers that they needed to be concerned with. And so these Ethiopians converted. Now, the problem with this is converting, unfortunately, as beautiful and great as this African Christianity, they unfortunately did a favor for the uh, Byzantines. Uh, they had a they invaded what you call the Sudan, and um, uh, it's for the purpose of possibly making them vassals. So they trekked from Ethiopia to the Sudan, and they were part of the reason, not the complete reason, of the collapse of the Meroic civilization. But these are the beautiful Africans who are indigenous who did convert. So Lalibela is a sacred place filled with many, many biblical stories, right? Um, so you can see from the Bible, there's this word, Ethiop, and Ethiop, right? And um, they are talking about these people, and they put this in this story called Noah, right? And Ham, and so um, they break up the world into kind of like people of Foot, people of Ethiopia, Canaanites, and etc. But that's not, these people have an ancient root, and they converted to Christianity in one sense because some of the concepts uh, they could relate to, because it was already in their own culture. But for political reasons, they converted. Um, and we could go on, and I have a video, not a video, but some work that I've done, talking about Ethiopic Christianity and its positives and its negatives. And one negative is that um, these people participated in an internal African enslavement, and their enslavement pretty much ended in the 1940s with Haile Selassie. So slavery by Christian Africans continued until about World War II, right? And who were they enslaving? They were enslaving African people that would not convert to Christianity. They called them pagans. And so, um, um, while what we want to do is we want to do history, and sometimes with history we can't take sides. It is what it is, but at the same time we can't allow people who are in these types of religions to make themselves chosen when they are really Johnny come latelys to history. Let me read the chat for a second and have something to drink. My brother Ben Norsut, how are you doing? Good to see you. Of course, Sun Lion is here, Immortal Dragon is here, and some of you are actually watching. But Ben Norsut, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, right? I'll get back to this so I can show them. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has a whole series that they snuck in when no one was watching, right? On the new, sorry, no, I was saying Nelson Rockefeller is the Michael uh, C. Rockefeller wing, and they have. Let's get back to where it was. Yeah. So they have given us lots of material that we could now use. So what they did is, wow, what they did was to complement the new opening of the Arch of Africa, they have supplemented it with these new videos that they just put up without a lot of fanfare. So we had already looked at the preview. We looked at um, of what they put up, kind of like a summary. But these are the videos that's there. So what I'm doing is I'm going over some of the videos without the sound, but I encourage our audience to watch these videos. Now, some people, of course, will be a little bit more courageous than I will, and they will play it and they will talk over it. But people, please do know I have been to the Arch of Africa. Um, I have unpacked it. I normally go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Museum. Shout out to Brooklyn Museum. I go to the museum in Boston, Museum of Fine Arts. I go to the museum in Philadelphia, right? The Penn Museum. Um, and so those are my major museums that I go to for my own research and to bring information to you. So they have snuck in all of this content, even though they're short videos. They're filled with primaries. Uh, they are filled with information about the places. So they are supplementing where they got their art from, the places and the cultures. That is unprecedented and unheard of in what you call traditional European scholarship. So, European scholarship post Diop and UNESCO has become multidisciplinary. So, we were in Lalibela, right? So, these are the rock built temples in Lalibela. And he says, so his mother named him Lalibela, which means honey eater. So King Lalibela was Lalibela means honey eater, and I did not know. And Ethiopia has a enormous uh, bee industry and bee honey industry and enormous and they even have a wine called honey wine, right? And they have an enormous coffee business, right? Their coffees are loved throughout the world. So that's some of the uh, things about Ethiopia. But of course, Ethiopia food is absolutely delicious, right? The tej, a honey wine, the and I and I was supposed to go. I've been telling Brother La that I was supposed to go and we were supposed to go eat at an Ethiopian restaurant. He had been shopping for Tej, so he found a store that gets honey wine. And the thing about it is this that I believe that Muslims can drink honey wine because it's made with honey, not with barley, right? Or any of those type of things. So it's not haram or something that they can't do. It's not made by their wine is not made by grapes, I think. So they could do that. But the now they're giving some information. It says Christ guided King Lalibela to build a second Jerusalem in Africa. Wow. So their story is that Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, will be in Africa. According to their thinking of Christ, unprecedented thinking. So they made Christianity their own by saying that Jerusalem, and then you have all of these stories about the Ark of the Covenant being in Ethiopia and etc. Right? So they took, how can I say, they repackaged Christianity for Africans. And so this temple, if you see it, it's built from the basically the mountain down, right? And why did they do that? Because there were wars going on, and that you could not see their structures unless you came right up on it. And by that time, they were able to defend it because they saw you coming, and you didn't know exactly where their sacred places were, right? So, unlike the usual construction of buildings from the bottom to the top, right, they build from the top to the bottom, right? And so they built down. And some of these temples, places, similar in what you see in Jordan, right? If you watch the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you will see these type of temples, but they were built in mountains. Here they're building them from the ground down. It says the medieval site of Lalibela comprises 11 rock-hewn churches situated on the eastern side of the river Jordanos, the Jordan River, and connected by a long tunnel. So they took a word from the Bible for Jordan, right? And then they called it Jordanos River. So they have a river there, and they're just telling you where it is. Carved at Roja, ceremony center for the Zagwe dynasty, circa 1137 to 1270. The churches have largely been credited to a monumental building campaign undertaken by King Lalibela in the early 13th century and have been added to and modified over successive centuries. This is beautiful Africa. This is Africa innovation. And the Met has done an incredible job of using modern photos, modern, uh, how can I say, technology to create these type of stories. Lalibela is what we call the climax or the highest point of rock excavation. Uh, the highest point, maybe. Uh, the latest, more likely, right, of rock excavation. But everybody's going to, because certainly the temples in what you call Egypt is unmatched, right? But the architecture here is beautiful. It's a place of pilgrimage. All right. So there's pilgrimage places in Africa, and that's an important concept, um, that they took Christianity for their own and they created pilgrimage points. Okay, so here are some of the pilgrimages to Lalibela. Incredible, right? So um, we have other pilgrimages in other cultures, such as the Islamic pilgrimages to Mecca, and you can see similarities, but this is in Africa. Okay. Over 100,000 pilgrims make the journey to Lalibela each year. To Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, Lalibela is one of the holiest sites of Africa to them. Now, we have other pilgrimage places in Africa that Africans go to. not as populated, but we have pilgrimage places in India, and as I said, in Mecca. Um, and then there are pilgrimages to, um, well, they're not really pilgrimages, but there are pilgrims that still go to places in um, in the Middle East, right, and in Africa, as far as looking for Mount Sinai, right, where the fabled Moses. Um, well, part of here's the reality, um, where Moses met his mountain, and that was actually in that was actually in Midian, and Midian is in Saudi Arabia. Um, so we don't know really where this, but we do know from their text that he met Jethro, and Jethro told him about a God in the mountain, and he had experienced Yahweh, and that's where he went and um, had the burning encounter with the burning bush. But then we also know now from El Arad, Tel Arad, sorry, in Judea, that many of the people who, some of these early stories, earlier than that story, they used the chemical ingredient to uh, commune the with Yahweh. So we know that. And so we have to bring that into when it comes to things being myth and reality. And I will tell everybody, if you listen to my work and my thinking, there was no Yahweh in Egypt, in Africa, in Egypt. There was no El in Egypt, right, in Africa. There was Baal, because the Hekakasu, they worship Baal, right? So the question to me is, with this story of Moses and his people and leading his people, well, there was no El there and there was no Yahweh there in Egypt. So the people that he said to bring out of Egypt, at best, they were from the Hekakasu, who were left there, right? Well, they worship Baal and Anas and Astarte. They did not worship El. And that might come to a shock for some of you, but some of you don't do history. Um, and so some of these places are imaginary. They are tradition. And if you're in that faith, I have no problem with you believing it. Just don't treat it as a fact and use it in some type of warfare against other groups of people when you haven't done the work. Right? You haven't done the work. And so you're pushing fables. And but we're talking about Africa now. Okay, so in these places, in these holies of holies, it's a lot of it is done in darkness, and it's very similar to places that you would see in what you call uh, Egypt. And then there are other temples in North Africa, particularly around Morocco, where there are, what do you call, say, cylinder pyramids, circle pyramids. And these temples are that. And so one day I'll give you a lesson on those. It says we can only make hypotheses on there. There's a lot of symbolism, though what they're saying is that even some of the material here has been forgotten. But we see the Ethiopian Rosetta concepts here. But there's a lot of sacred symbols. Um, the Hebrews and the Christians have an issue with symbols, unless it's their symbols. But in this place, these Christians, these African Christians, have their own concepts. If you look at Beta Gregorius Church, the cruciform is reflected in the space. So here they accept the crucifixion, I guess, concepts of the crucifixion and the cross. So he is talking about, but the beautiful thing is, wow, the Met has went directly there and interviewed people about their particular culture. So to preserve it before, um, the world changes again. So he says, I am a key holder to the church. And this is priest Jebre Kiros Debray Casa. He's a parish leader and key holder of the Beta Georgis Church. And so, it's interesting that a lot of Ethiopians were taken out of Ethiopia when there was a war, and a lot of them were taken to Israel, right? Um, and so there are many Ethiopians now in Israel uh, trying to have some type of citizenship. They are now to because the policy in Israel is that you have to at some point be in the army, and they're serving in the army um, and of Israel to protect Israel, right? Not to protect Africa, but to protect Israel. And uh, it's it's really interesting if many of them want to repatriate back to Africa, right? Um, and and uh, with culture and things do to you that you forget the places where you were born, your ancestry. World Monuments Fund, one of its inaugural projects at Lalibela in the 1960s, and initiated a program in 2012 and to train local priests in architectural conservation. So, um, how can I say the world got involved and they helped the Ethiopians to conserve their own materials. One of the experts of the World Monuments Fund, when he had to do some conservation work inside, what is he? What happened? What happened? But he could not go into the Holy of Holies. So you can conserve all you want, but you can't get yourself in the Holies of Holies, right? So the buck stopped there. Thank you very much. We Africans, we do it ourselves. You're not a priest. It says, he said, you're not a priest. Nobody's allowed in the Holies of Holies in the innermost sanctuary, right? If you are not a priest. Thank you so very much. So you're going to have to train us so we can do it ourselves. As a priest, I am happy to get involved in conservation work. Now, interesting as we explore the culture, if we want to, of Ethiopian priests, some of them live their when they become monks and priests. Some of them live their whole lives in those temples, never come out until they pass away. That's their sacred duty. Okay, so now I have the exclusive privilege as a priest to enter the holies of holies chamber of the church, and so he can tell us what's in it, but you can't go into it. And the Ethiopians, if anybody knows, or how can I say, uh, expert soldiers, right? They have no problem fighting to the death, right, to conserve what is theirs, even though they converted to this religion, but they have taken it on their own. Heavy damage has occurred at all 11 Lalibela churches. We have lost a portion of the heritage already. Okay. And we do not want to see any additional irreversible loss. Okay. So let's move on. These are not dead monuments. For them, it is living. And um, so in Africa, you have another form of kind of like Orthodox Christianity called the Coptic Church. Um, and at some point, we will talk about Coptic Church and in Egypt. So let me just see how my audience is doing. Um, let's see. I hope everybody's doing fine, and I am showing you some extraordinary. So here's Tigray, Ethiopia. Now I've done some work, and there's a writing system in this place, Tigray, and it is very close to the Meta Nature. Right? It's unbelievable how close to the Meta Nature. Their prayer to God from deep within mingled with tears. So let me just see what the chat is saying. Oh, I have my brother Joey, Joseph from Solomonic TV. Give him a follow on his page. Find it. So what I'm saying, Solomonic, um, is that the Metropolitan Museum on their YouTube page, they have, and I can go back to it, they have quietly released maybe about 12 to 14 videos relating to their new opening of the Arch of Africa to show where many of the artifacts that they have actually came from. So we were looking at Ethiopia. I think we've done enough in Ethiopia. So you can go and watch it yourself, but we have content for days. Now, I am going through the material without the sound because I don't want a copyright strike, and I am reading. I know some of you are a little bit more braver and you have channels, but the problem is I don't want to do all of this and then all of a sudden there's a complaint and they strike all the videos that I do on this and strike down my page. So what I'm doing is just going through it and just doing a reaction video and finding sound bites. So Great Ghana, many of us are connected to Ghana, the Congo, Benin, Nigeria, right? Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia. Many of us are connected to those places. Um, Ghana, Nigeria, have a great heritage, a great ancient heritage. Niger has a great ancient heritage, and many of their artifacts have found themselves in museums. But and so here is the great Ghanaians, and this is Kumasi. This is the the Kwesda Festival. Now, there is some good things about the Kwesda Festival. It seemed to be a festival relating around to planting, a seasonal festival, but it in for them it was sacred. But there is some myths that we have to where Africans warred with other Africans, and this Aquasada festival. We can talk about it later at another point. I don't want to disturb it, but this is of the power of the Ashanti, uh, the power of the Ashantis. The Ashantis rose out of pretty obscurity. Um, uh, they were one of the Akan peoples, but they got a weapon, the gun, and they were able to successfully defeat some of the other tribes, the Fante, the Ewe, the Ga, right? And but nevertheless, um, the Akan culture in the Shanti culture is a great culture. And I had the pleasure in 1986, yes, when I was in Black Studies Department, was in 86, 86, I think, 85 or 86, where then Tufo Apakawari II, the Ashanti king, came to America to the Brooklyn Museum, and Dr. Leonard Jeffries was my professor, and he asked us to participate in helping the Durbar. So that was that 86 or 85 or 84? I'm not so sure anymore. It's been a long time. I have to look it up. But anyway, we, the sons of Africa and the daughters of Africa, and Dr. Jeffrey's students, we participated with the king of Ghana, the linguist, Nana Bafo, and the chief priestess, Nana Sa. And they had a pilgrimage where all of the uh, Ashantis that living in America came to see their king in America. And so they had a great Durbar, which they're having a Durbar here. Now, in this Durbar, I believe that they are bringing out, uh, I don't know if they're bringing out the golden stool. Now, this seems very familiar to me. This seems to me the palace. And I have been in the palace of the Ashantis to see the king. I have been there. And traditionally, they worship the Abossum. The Abossum is like their ancestral um, um, ancestors. I'm not going to say deities or spirits. I'm going to say that these are the Abossum is these groups of people and that they worship. And so here in Equestridae, you have uh, an African who is probably being possessed by his great ancestors in the Quessa Day festival. Now, there's some of you that are, uh, how can I say, let me see, Solomonic. Solomon says, doesn't that temple have ankhs on them? Well, yes, there is, yes and no. They have Christianized the ankh. So that was Solomonic TV's look at when we were in the uh, Ethiopian churches. But here is the stool. Now, in ancient Egypt, we have the same stool, but it's a headrest. So these kind of figures kind of move out through Africa. They here he says they believe there are certain, and they have different types of mediums of worship. They believe that there are certain God sent powers. Talking about the bosom, they believe that they're bosom, hiding in the mountains, hiding in goats. So they believe um, in concepts which we call animism and ancestral spirits, but so is so very similar to what we call ancient Egypt, where the Ba is represented by the sheep or the goat. The Ba is so important that Canaan, who created us all, right, is a ram-headed figure, but they believe that their ancestors and the Ambassador is hiding in trees as well as other places. Very, very different than the Christian concepts. And sometimes they would build a whole temple. Why would they temple? Let's see, and house what they call a shrine. So in their house, or in ancient Egypt, you would call it a pur, and you might call it a per ankh, a learning system. And inside there, there might be a shrine of Ptah, Tahuti, right? A shrine of female netchers like Hawat Hor, right? Inside that, and that would be their place. That's where you could commune with them. So Africa has what you call continuity of Africa. Now it says every community in Asante has a god, very similar to ancient Egypt, where every place has a city netcher, right? So you have all of these different gnomes, these 42 gnomes, and every gnome there is a city netcher. Well, he uses the word God. Um, Interesting. Okay. And every community has a shrine. And in Africa, throughout many of these places are to heroes, ancestors, right? That become what you call spiritual beings. But originally they were dedicated to great human beings. At its zenith in the 18th century, the Asante Kingdom was one of the richest and most powerful states of the African continent. Among Asante's singular historical cultural landmarks are 10 structures created during the 18th and 19th centuries as expressions of the spiritual life of its citizenry. Very similar to other places in Africa, but these people will talk about what they know. The problem is that Africa is also often very local, right? Um, Very local, and that has been a problem of Africa, Africa had divine kings, and if you're a divine king, you're pretty much headstrong. You think you're a divine king. Um, Islam, when it came into Africa, gave it a solution where it was able to unify the African under one God, one messenger, right? When they in that particular phase of Islam, right? Uh, and that facilitated trade, unity, and the problem was if you were not a Muslim, right? If you didn't wasn't a Muslim, you had to pay taxes, right? Or or you become a servant, a slave, and sometimes that you were find yourself on a pilgrimage as a servant or slave to Cairo and to Mecca. And we think, I'm saying sarcastically, Mansa Musa for his great pilgrimage of gold to other groups of people outside of Africa and human beings as tribute to other groups of people. And because of Mansa Musa, they came for us. So this is a traditional Asante building, right? Abode. Uh, you have these traditional structures in other places in China and in Japan. This is the African version, right? In ancient, what we call Egypt, uh, we can see ruins of these places. Certainly in Nubia and other places, what they call Nubia and the Sudan, and all throughout Africa, Zimbabwe, they all have their particular style. What is he? What's going on here? Uh, Okay, here the deity is able to meet with the priest. That's what he says inside this particular shrine. And then outside, you can see these are, how can I say, all of these are um, logos. They represent words and ideas and concepts, right? In ancient Egypt, you might see them as classifiers, but here these whole things, these icon symbols represent uh, a whole language, and they have their order and their very particularities of what they do. So it says for whatever message or whatever activity. So what's he saying before this? The demon is able to meet with the priest for whatever message or whatever activities. And this has become problematic because this where you can believe it, but the problem is it's man-made. Men are interacting uh, with this, and um, shout out to the God Killer, Uncle Keck. Um, these it's man-made, and people can call it spirit, right? Um, and then we can look in other cultures outside of Africa. And like I was telling you about Telerad, where they were using cannabis hallucinogens, cooking it over dung, right? And and mixing it with frankincense. And they were That was their way to commune with Yahweh in that early part, right? Now, in other cultures, um, how can I say? Uh, Maybe similar, maybe different, but I don't think here you have them cooking cannabis over dung. But there might be uh, um, things that people might take herbs and stuff like that. But again, they're not cooking cannabis over dung, right? So when we look at comparative religions, people can believe what they believe, but the question becomes to bathe in so that they may receive what they wish from the gods. So in comparative cultures, we can look at the differences. It is given to people who are sick. Let me blow this up. Something is given to the people, herbs, something who are sick, cursed, or abroad and need assistance. So, um, and to bathe in so that they may receive what they wish for the from the bosom. That's the word that they use. The section over here, you can see relics of drums. They play according to a particular rhythm which the obosom understands. So they commune with rhythms, and so they have something called the talking drums. There are the stools. I have a stool in my house. Um, Dr. Leonard Jeffries made probably and Nana Camille Yarbrough uh, in our cultural uh, festivals. We would bring out the stool. Reverend Calvin Butts, when he was installed in Abyssinia, there were stools there. Um, uh, that is how we connect to our past, or at least give tribute, right, by using some of the symbolism and ideas of the past. Um, what is this? Okay, that's the stools. I don't know what that thing is on the side, but some type of relic. Situated in communities to the north in northern Kumasi and central Ghana, these earthen compounds have been sites where deities were consulted, right? So in ancient Nile Valley, we know that the Apis bull, uh, the Happy Ankh, right? Hep was consulted. They are rare exemplars of these distinctive architecture styles developed across the Ashanti state, very similar to the gnome structures in Egypt. Now there's a crocodile. Egypt has a crocodile called Sobek. The head of the crocodile was destroyed for whatever reason in this particular temple, it seems. So we have to bring back the original wall. So they're doing conservation uh, of a living culture. So here is that crocodile, and it's called an Adinkra symbol. And these are, like I said, whole concepts, whole ideas, not just words that appear um, in this traditional culture. Okay, this is a canon. So canon means power. So in one of the shrines, you might find something with power, right? Um, you got to commune with power. So they also have the odd winning a ben, the ram horn. So they make sacred, which is a symbol of peace and sacrifice. And so you will see the Akans blowing horns, these great ram horns, and it's found in almost all of the shrines. Okay, so this symbol right here, you might see the symbol in, let's say, Nile Valley, very similar to what the king, which is on the normal palette, right? Where you see ram horns or ox horns, right? And you will see this. And so this seems to be kind of like a face and a body with ram horns on it. Um, they made animals sacred. From the 1960s, buildings were acquired by Ghana Museum and Monuments Board in recognition of the importance as a national monument. Okay, again, you can watch this in all of its glory and all of its music, in all of the accents, and you can watch that. I just can't play it, but I can scroll through. Um, so they're talking again about conservation. So the Metropolitan Museum of Art done an incredible job in going to these places on a mission and bringing it back in HD. And so you see the Santi Man and you see initiation. Here's this initiation scar right here, right? Um, and they're talking about concepts of conservation. Okay. And he's and he says a nation is alive when its culture is alive. And if the culture is not alive, then the nation is something else, a construct. So if you don't inculcate this in the children, uh, um, they're going to be somebody else's children. The conservation allows for us to create that social connection. And let me see if I can play this. Let's play a little bit of this. These very beautiful train dances. So these are not arbitrary dances. These are uh, part of their culture. They recognize exactly what is going on, right? And he's representing the opossum in his grass skirt with these beautiful movements that have been trained over time. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so I've spent an hour and a half on this um, on this particular presentation. I'm going to play the beginning of it, and then at another point, remember I got content for days now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over another place. Again, here's the thing. If anybody wants to support my work, um, many of you think you know me from being on other channels. That's my personality on other channels. Um, I have an honors award in Black Studies from the City College of New York under the Africana Studies Department under Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Um, I sat at the feet of Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Yosef Ben Jokanan. Um, I have a great relationship with the elders of our community, a better, more loving, more respectful relationship with the people who fought to bring this to us, who over the years did conferences and such as the ASCAC, such as the African Heritage Studies Association, such as the Black Studies Council, all of those things that Dr. John Henry Clark was involved in, and Dr. Ben in some of them, and then Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Dr. James Turner, and so many other scholars. I have had my formative years sitting at their feet. Dr. James Turner, right? My formative years, I worked at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture at the New York Public Library for 5 years. There I met notables like Bishop Tutu. I met leaders such as Aristide, City College in New York. Thomas Sankara came to City College in New York, and Dr. Clark's college, university. Um, Bishop Tut, I'm sorry, um, Maurice Bishop spoke. So I worked on a project with Ghanaians for like I said, the Durbar. I think that was in, I don't know, 85, the Durban in 85. And then I went to Ghana in 86 with Dr. John Henry Clark, with Dr. Leonard Jeffries, with Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, with Sybil Clark, Dr. Clark, and of course with Dr. Clark. I went there. I went in 86 and 87. I went to Egypt. Uh, that was when I went to Egypt in 87. The person that you know as Brother Reggie, uh, I was a character on some of these other shows for their purposes. Who I am is a person who is well respected and well loved by many scholars, right? Dr. Jacob Carruthers, Dr. Malana Karenga, to name just a few, Dr. Asa Hilliard, um, just to name a few of the scholars that I have done work with. I have worked on with Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Yalengi Ngemi on the converting the translation of Civilization of Barbarism to English. I worked on that team. And so, who you think I am on some of those other channels, that's who for the purposes of those channels, that's who you think I am. But if you really want to know who I am, I'm a person who actually worked at uh, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture at the New York Public Library, right? If you really want to know, and I was there in a formative time period where we were going both back to West Africa and both back to Egypt. We went to Egypt. When I went to Egypt, in 1987. 1,000 Africans from around the world, but largely from America, went with Dr. Jacob Carruthers, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Asa Hilliard, and ASCAC. In general, Baba Bonacci was there. Um, I think Dr. Ricchetti was there. The formative, and many of the people that we work with are now ancestors, right? Professor Small went on our trip in 87. Many of the people that we worked with, they're now ancestors. But there are people who actually worked with them who breathed their breath, who literally breathed their breath, right? Who was able to sit at their feet. And so when I do this work on Africa online TV, please know that I have a long connection to actually the work, and I am, um, I am also I'm concerned about how the work has transferred. I'm concerned about how it's being monetized. I'm concerned about those things, and you should be too, because there's a real element of of this work. Listen, I knew Shaka Amos for daggone 36, 37 years. Could you believe it? I knew his mother for much longer, right? Sister Ingram. I know his sisters, his two sisters. Um, and it was actually Shaka that alerted um, uh, a channel that maybe I should be a part of the channel. And I mean, hopefully for many of you, my work has benefited. But please don't let anybody, take me from who my good work and make it something else, right? So I'm not going to be on any channel cursing at anybody. I'm not going to be. I don't do that, right? I don't put on a show, right? What I do is I show my work. Now, so the question to you is, here's a question to you. Uh, I take people to museums. I could read anywhere between 50 to 60% of any meta nature, right? On the fly, and the rest I need vocabulary and I need grammar, right? You're looking at authentic people who serve you, right? And look, I mean, to buy me lunch, to buy me dinner, and things like that is very helpful. I am. Don't listen to anybody saying I beg for cash apps. Anybody says that is just a really shallow and low level person. Because I give more. I've always given more. I give PowerPoints with citations, right? I can write like a lot of people cannot do. A lot of people can talk, it sound good, but they can't write. You never see any of their writing samples because they didn't go to university. I went to a university. Now, people call me Resume Reggie. Yeah, I got a resume, but what it is that people appreciate the wrong people, right? I'm not a got you person. I mean, I'm a helpful person. If you don't know something, I will try to explain to you. But you have so many of these people, and it's a community that, how can I say, they act like they're more than what they really are, right? But you support them because they're entertaining. I'm boring. I'm boring, but to you. However, what I will do is I will take you to the museums, right? I'll take you to the burial grounds. That's what I will do. I will read what the H has said to you, and I will do cross connections, and then I will argue some of my points, like the connection between West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa. I will argue my points, and I will argue my points with information, not just BS and not talk. I will cite my sources, right? I will create plausibility, right? So don't let anybody say I'm scamming you when I'm talking about the connection between West Africa and Egypt, or what is so-called Egypt and Nubia, or because in my next shows, I will show you what the Metropolitan Museum says, right? We got to overlay what they say with pottery, the origin of pottery around Mali. Uh, we have to overlay it with cattle culture, right? The migrations. We have to look at the deep time period of um, the Southern African as he migrates throughout all of these places because it was a Southern Africa that populated the world, populated Africa. And the Southern Africa went south, central, I mean, it went east, central, and west. The Southern Africa, before the Green Sahara. So these little arguments that we have is really just embarrassing because it just shows that you start with Southern Africa, the sub-Saharan African. It's the sub-Saharan Africa that migrated to West Central and East Africa, and then migrated to Northeast Central and West Africa, right? In the Green Sahara phase. So some of you don't know the time periods of Africa, but we had a deep time period that was in Southern Africa. And then we had periods where there were hunters and gatherers, and then they migrated. And then we have other periods where they dispersed populations using pottery vessels that could carry water. So and they used elephants at one time. They used other type of pack animals at one time, right? Elephants, the small African elephant, were pack animals that they used, and then the ox. They used the ox, and then it became more cattle culture with a new, smaller, more manageable cattle, and they transversed. And so I don't blame the people who I end up arguing with. I just think that, and show me your library card. Just show me your writing. I mean, I respect you, but like, you're not my teacher, right? I've been taught by the best. I don't have to be your teacher, but I do have much more experience uh, with uh, with the material, right? So, wow, I could have put something up. So, uh, well, Bell, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm just concerned about how people you know, how people value, how Africans value other Africans for their purposes, right? And where's my share screen? So yeah, share screen. I started off here. This is where I started off, and I am going to replay this video, and I'm gonna get ready to close. And I want to thank you, and I want to give quality videos. I don't want to give um, these one-liners that are really shrouded by personalities. So this is what I did today.
Welcome to Africa Online TV. Today's video is to alert the audiences to the Met's commitment to Africa, mission, art, and the people of Africa, and a hidden bonus. The Met's Arts of Africa Galleries has returned on May 31st, 2025 in a reimagined Michael C. Rockefeller wing. Following a multi-year renovation, the re-envisioned installation reintroduces visitors to the museum's collection of sub-Saharan African art through a selection of some 500 works organized to survey major artistic movements and living traditions from across the subcontinent. The new galleries present original creations from the Middle Ages to the present, and 1/4 of the works are on display at the museum for the first time. To supplement the exhibition, the Met has included very informative and rare footage on social media very quietly. These cultural landmarks presented on YouTube is a perfect way of showing how the artwork lives within the culture. This undertaking of connecting the art to the living spaces is unprecedented and shows enormous commitment to its exhibition pieces, its mission, and its commitment to the places and peoples. Now getting to the bonus, I will turn the video over to Brother Reggie to introduce it for our audiences.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Uh, so what I was saying is, I had a good rant. Africa has to be refocused, re-talked about. Africa, the beginnings of Africa is in southern Africa. There was no Yahweh. There was no um, Christianity. There was none of that, right? 100,000 years. Those Africans from the southern Africa, they went east, central, and west. That's where Africans went. So there's a period where Africans went east, central, and west. Uh, they continue to climb to another period uh, where before they went to the Green Sahara, where they're Africans east, central, and west. Around 60,000 years ago, ultimately they left through North Africa to Eurasia, and then they left through the Strait of Gibraltar, and they also left through Yemen, the Red Sea, two places, and then that's where humanity intermingled with other earlier species, right? There's none, your religion does not exist at that time period. Leave religious studies out when you want to talk about Africa, right? Then we have a group of people who say there's no connection between Egypt and West Africa. Well, history says that Africans migrated up from the south, east, central, and west in one particular period, and then they, in another particular period, about 12,000 years, you have this large population of the Green Sahara, which was basically paradise on earth. The climate changes now, and there's desertification. Africans move again, bulks of Africans move down to East, Central, and West Africa. So you have parent peoples of the Southern Africa. You have in a deep time, you have the parent peoples in Southern Africa moving up to the Rift Valley and across, right, where the area was more aquatic. And then you have another period where Africans moved up to the Green Sahara, right? So Africans have always been transversing Africa. Religious studies do not have an answer for that. Then you have a period where the Green Sahara dries up, and those same Africans move west, central, and East Africa, right? In that period, then you have emerging civilizations, cultures. One we know about, of course, Egypt and so-called Egypt. That's not its name, right? But that's the name that we use, right? And then there's Nubia. That's not its name, what we use. But there's another civilization that we do not talk about, which is Nook civilization, Nok civilization. And so these people in this particular area, um, they help us with ceramics. Ceramics is key to a level of mobility. Ceramics because it can contain water, right? And humans can move longer distance because they can have water. There's another period, of course, where there's the cattle culture, right? Cattle culture helps the African traverse large places because they have to slowly move with their cattle to wadis and rivers and lakes and things like that, right? So, and then there is another period, early, how can I say, a period closer to us, where there's the peopling of North Africa, right? We know the terms, the names of them. The Checheno people. We call them the Libyans, right? And those groups of people, and they were very mobile people, right? And they were across large spanses of times, and they were at sometimes mostly uh, enemies to what you call ancient Egypt, and then ultimately they were able to during the 22nd or so dynasty, they were able to capture parts of Egypt or capture Egypt and become the. And then the 25th dynasty, you have Africans from the south, Sudan moving up and recapturing it for a while until again it collapsed, right? All this is happening in Africa, right? And the Metropolitan Museum of Art is helping us understand this. The simplistic arguments that we have about, oh, we're West African, we're East African, uh, we're North Africans, is simplistic because you have to admit from what I said, we all have a little bit of Southern Africa in us. And those Southern Africans during that period went East, Central, and West. And we all have a little bit of that. And then we have a little bit of those Africans that went to the Green Sahara, right? And when climate changed, right, we have the populations going across the Sahel to Egypt, right? And then we have to follow another culture, the Tumulite culture, that goes from West Africa to Central to East Africa, right? On the southern part. So we have to do some real research and some investigation, some reading to understand that what we call sub-Saharan Africa, right, which they have equated all of that to the Negroes, is um, a major part of who we are. And so, because of religion, and because of false training, in being miseducated and not knowing, right? You come up with these complexes, these false arguments about Mediterranean peoples. All of that is late, right? It's not relevant. What's relevant is the larger march of humanity from the south to all of these places to the north, right? And then going down back to places like the Sahel and the Cross. And we have the cattle culture, we have the food producing culture, we have the we have the ceramic culture, the pottery culture. We have all of these cultures, right? And we have a continuity of Africa. And then, of course, later, yes, we were enslaved, right? Um, yeah, we have that, and we had our own internal problems that we were not able to solve, right? We have all that, but some of these other channels, their narratives and their focus, their framing is really off. Southern Africa first, from Southern Africa to kind of like the middle of the Sahel, from there to North Africa during the Green Sahara phase. Green Sahara phase forces people to go back. Um, but during this Green Sahara phase, you have an important culture called the Nook culture, right? And you have the Nook culture at the same time as so-called Egyptian Nubian culture. Um, some people argue that ceramics were developed in the Khartoum area, separated, but it's doubtful because people were migrating and talking. And pottery was the highest tech uh, instrument of that time period. So it's difficult to say that all of a sudden, some spookiness instead of more rational that people actually communicated. So you go to these other channels and you hear sound bites. You go to these other channels and you you meet people who have a little bit of information but not enough information. You go to these other channels and these people can't. They're barely doing good PowerPoints, but they're not able to. You won't see them pass our communities. They can't interface with other scholars. They can't ask decent questions, and they certainly can't write. But you people have, you have to pick and choose who is what information is valuable, and it's always the information that should be over the personality. Stop worshiping these men and these women that are popping up and they sound good, especially the people with these religious concepts, because their God, who they believe, was not in Southern Africa. in those formatives, not in the Green Sahara, not in the Sahel, none of that. So with that said, um, buy me lunch. And my next video, I will do a little mixture of what I was trying to say is this piece right here, okay, is a bridge to what they call North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, right? The so-called Sub-Saharan people who are really the mothers and fathers of all of us, right? They begin to write, and this is the Meroic text, right? How beautiful and how important is this, right? Where the so-called sub-Saharan Africans are now actually writing, right? And the fact of the matter is, those people who became the North African, the Egyptians, those types of groups of people, they had help. They didn't do it all by themselves. So I'm just saying, pick and choose who you want to watch. I admit, I'm not charismatic. I admit that. I admit that I'm wordy, right? I admit that. But one thing that you can do is get a real experience from the work that I do. And I go on channels like Smash Rockwell, I go on Camgiverse, Heckin' Netcher, uh, Solomon TV. I think I mentioned Camgiverse. I go on Garfield Show. And I go on those shows because and I go on Uncle Keck shows, Pseudo Killers and Community of Skeptics. And I go on those shows because those groups of people are the closest people who are being able to write, cite, and have realistic arguments, right? That's where you will find me. And then, of course, ASCAC, Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, and then there's a Bibitumi, right? And me interacting with scholars. So I hope you enjoyed this program, and uh, thanks so much. And I will appreciate, of course, um, if you like my video, if you subscribe to my video, right? And generally just support my work, right? So peace.